My name is Imran Saleem, and I'm a lead security architect and a researcher. We usually, go back and try to find out zero-day activities in the global signaling, understanding the threat landscape in the telecom networks. And the talk today is mainly going to bring the intelligence that we have captured from the Russian-Ukraine conflict. But the so this is the agenda, it is basically focusing on the intelligence gathering on some of the political events that we have seen in the past and the ongoing events that's happening in the Russian and Ukraine conflict. So I think we are going to talk about the role of cyber attacks in the armed conflict, and that is going to be the core of the talk today. So if we move towards the next slide, so there is no clear date when the cyber warfare began. The introduction of cyber dimension has fundamentally shifted the nature of the wartime. So you don't really have to have two tanks shooting at each other to call it a war. I think cyber warfare has allowed the actors to participate, despite the relative importance of it provides anonymity for them, and then there a plausible deniability of wrongdoings. So it's more convenient for them, it's more cost effective, and it basically helps break down the traditional foundation of the conflict. There are several ways to execute, cyber attacks, and I think most of them are quite known to the public. Spionage, sabotage, denial of service, attacking industrial control systems, doing propaganda, disrupting operational aspects of financial institutions, manipulating stocks. So all these basically falls into one of the broad areas of armed cyber role in the armed conflict. This can basically be used. So if you move to the next slide, please. Yeah. So again, I think the slide basically talks about the phenomena of nation-state activities. Have these phenomena existed in the past? And if we are to look on the historical outlook, the politically cyber-driven attacks, we will notice high number of sophisticated attacks were conducted by the Russian APT groups. So the ones highlighted in red are basically focused on a nation dated back to 2007, 2008, 2017. These are denial of service attacks, ransomware attacks conducted by Russian groups. So if we move forward to the next slide, please. So I think we just tried to cover that these phenomena does exist, and this basically these political shifts drive the cyber attacks. So just if we move forward, please, yeah. So I think so if we are to go back to the timelines of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, there were some political events that had happened, and we actually saw and gathered, we saw the reflection of these events directly on the global signaling. So, and we captured some interesting facts around it. And if we are to notice these dates, February 2020, Trump's administration, signed an agreement with Taliban for US troops withdrawal. That was supposedly happening in May 2021. This was endorsed by Biden's administration but the timelines were moved from May to September. Now, capturing these timelines, we actually managed to gather a bit of intelligence of what was happening in Afghanistan dated back in 2021. So if we move forward to the next slide, please. Yeah. So these were the key artifacts that we actually captured during that entire period. And if we notice, going back into September 2020, we haven't seen any historical activities targeting toward Afghanistan. And Afghanistan users were never the prime target. The activity started somewhere in February 2021. Again, all these political, the attacks that we see were due to either political events or administrative changes. And the threat actors that we found behind these activities were quite nefarious, and we actually knew them very well. We knew their traits. They were quite linked, and they were actually connected to nation states. Again, there were clustered sources, and if you notice, there was activity started from February 2021, went all the way towards August 2021 and late September, and all these attacks were using SS7. And if you go to the next slide, please. So these were the motives and targets. So again, all these political events does have an impact. You probably need to have the right area to look into. And in this specific case, the prime targets were Afghanistan subscribers. The secondary targets were roamers in Afghanistan, and few of the subscribers were belonging to NATO countries. Based on our OSINT analysis, we actually found out that potential victims were news and media, NGOs, governments, and the motives were basically location tracking and doing potential interception on the radio level. Now, this is very serious because if you are to do a radio interception, then you must have a physical presence on ground to support that activity, which basically describes how these operations is being conducted, and there is a good amount of coordination that happens between these attackers. So if we move forward to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the entire theme. Again, we just wanted to bring the fact that political shift can drive cyber attacks in a region. And if we are to go forward now and talk about the conflict that we have seen in between Russia and Ukraine, is it like different than what we have seen in Afghanistan? And why did we speak about the events in Afghanistan? I think, in my opinion, the attacks were there even during the time of U.S. forces withdrawal from Afghanistan. It was thus not being captured on media. Since the Ukraine-Russian conflict is very closely being monitored by several groups, that's why it has the attention and the artifacts that are collected. So one of the artifacts that we have captured is from the Europol, and the timelines of the cyber attacks, as you can clearly see, that are circled in red. These are all the attacks that were actually targeting a telecom infrastructure and the variations of the attack were quite dynamic. It was starting from denial of service, BGP, prefix hijacking, satellite hacks, So it is all about, how to capitalize this view of, using the skills and, getting back to a state where they can inflict damage towards operator. And all these activities are coordinated, consistent, and intel sharing is also happening between attackers. So this is something not executed in silos, but, a lot of information is basically passed on from one actor to another actor. So if we move toward the next slide, please. So this is how we are going to understand the Russian signaling activities. And I think if we go and look into the past historical activities in 2020, 2021, although the activities does exist, but there was a huge number of increase in signaling attacks that actually went up to 150 times comparing to what we saw back in 2020-21. And again, these activities were quite sophisticated. They were able to bypass security controls, and most of the attacks were basically focused and targeted. And the key factor around it was that the attacks were executed through fuzzing techniques, which means that these are not really precise attacks that are known, but they are also discovering vulnerabilities in operators' network. So if you go forward to the next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the behavioral characteristics and the threat landscapes. I think the artifact around it is, the victims were never Ukraine and NATO countries. The attack intensity was quite high in this specific case, and the coverage was quite extreme. They were targeting inbound roamers and NATO subscribers, and these were basically doing zero-day exploits. We have did disclosures on that, and we'll walk you through in next couple of slides. But the motive and objectives were account takeovers, identity spoofing, fuzzing, and it was roughly targeting around 60 odd operators. So if we have to go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so I think, we should actually ask questions to ourselves. Are these groups, government-backed attackers? And I think in coming few slides, I'm going to basically, try to back my statement here. They were Russian actors. We are actually seeing they are aggressively pursuing this, wartime advantages in using the telecom infrastructure. And I think the objectives were, in this specific case, were doing network discoveries through scanning, information gathering and profile extraction, location tracking, hostile registration, account takeovers, and fraud. And the targets were not necessarily Ukraine and NATO countries, but it was focused also towards Middle East and Africa. So if we are good towards the next slide, please. Yeah. So I think this is one of the cases that we captured, and it is precisely, doing by performing scanning on the networks, understanding, what are the applications, how the networks are responding, and that information really helps them build and organize the next stage of the attacks. And this information is heavily used in order to set up the next mode of operation. So if you are to go to the next slide, please. And this is one of the examples this is only one of the examples. We have also in past seen account takeovers that are linked to social media. This could be cloud accounts, account takeovers, social media account takeovers like WhatsApp, Facebook, Gmail, GMX. A lot of information has been seen, but this is precisely captured in the case because, this is a social media account that was used for performing voice over IP communication. And again, why this becomes dangerous is because whenever we are registering ourselves with voice over IP applications, the only identity that is unique to the subscriber is the CLI, or we should call it the identification, line identification. Now, if you are actually calling someone, the person on the other side would definitely be comfortable in speaking to you and, going to share some information. And if we are going to take over that account, probably it's going to help adversaries extract meaningful information using the identity impersonation. So in that specific case, the only thing required was the MSISDN, the phone number. You just get the SMS through the fake location updates and input that two-factor authentication in the website, and the website is not linked to the email, and you can actually complete the execution. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a very typical case, and this is how we are going to back our statement that these activities that are seen from Russia are basically supported by nation-state activities. And in this specific case, you can see the low layers are basically spoofed from countries like Afghanistan and UAE, but the upper layers are spoofed with a different identity. And when we actually went an extra mile and we saw, where this traffic is coming from, this traffic was physically coming from, Russian operators. So it was quite intriguing understanding how these telecom operators are supporting these malicious activities and helping the nation's actors, perform and execute their objectives. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what we have done in order, and whatever we discovered during the entire investigation, we actually captured that information and all these zero-day exploits that we saw. We did a responsible disclosure for that on the GSMA. The publication is going to be available by Q1 2023, and I think it's requested towards operators to, whenever the briefing paper is available, I think they should test this vulnerability in the labs and see if it's something that if this is the weaknesses are kind of part of the network, and do the mitigations accordingly. Next slide, please. Yeah. So again, we are going to talk now on the financial impact and how these zero-day are actually impacting financially towards operator. And this is one of the examples that we captured. I think on the left-hand side, we discovered that there was a zero-day activity in 2021. We reported that to the CVT group, and the same year, a tier 1 operator experienced the same vulnerability. Now, the disclosure was already made, and you can see the highlighted ones. The CVT 2021-52 was basically referenced in their incident fraud incident report. The operator lost around 50K in around 12 days due to this zero-day exploit. And now it's not necessary that this is the only loss. There are a lot of operators, they lack of interest in reporting such activities to GSMA, or they don't really have the capability to monitor those zero-day attacks. So there could be multiple reasons they're not sharing that information. But yes, there is financial impact associated with these kind of attacks as well. So if you are to move to the next slide, please. And again, we did a disclosure for this zero-day activity. It is available to public, and I think the mitigation strategies around that is also made available, is part of the publication. So if any one of the operators are part of the GSMA, just go to the info center, and then you will basically be able to see the details and how the zero-day were exploited. The TTPs are there already. The indicators of compromise are also part of the briefing paper. Towards the next slide, please. Yeah. So work ethics and disclosures. If we have to go to the next slide, and why we are doing that is because we want to share this key intelligence that we gather from our security research. We want to give it back to the industry. And the main reason for sharing these zero-day exploits is because we want operators to not experience such kind of breaches and financial losses, so they can safely deliver and secure services towards a subscriber. So that is the motive and objective behind doing such kind of disclosures. Moving to the next slide. What are the key actions that probably an operator has to take into account, and I think I would try to emphasize on the fact that the telecom industry does not really have very strong intel sharing framework. Unlike enterprise, I think they have CITIX and Taxi, where they are actually using information, sharing a level of information among organization is helping them take timely actions. This is not the case in telecoms. And I think one of the key takeaway is that the operator should also build a security strategy that can handle cyber conflicts. I think for now, what I have seen is they are having resilient networks, but then when it comes to handle cyber conflicts, probably most of the organizations that I have spoken about, they haven't taken that into consideration. So that is one of the key takeaways. I think the last few points would be, usually operators do refer to security guidelines every now and then. I think that's not an obsolete measure to assess your security, compliance and maturity. I think there should be something done beyond that, and that is something not part of the doc. But yes, security guidelines are not an absolute measure. And I think operators should enable themselves to have a mindset of global threat intelligence, where I think having threat hunting, detecting the unknowns, understanding the anomalies should be the key area within their workflow. This will really help operators understand and give them an understanding how the attackers are actually moving and planning their executions. I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
So we have no questions from remote. Does anyone have anything that they want to observe from the room? I will just say that from long ago experience at Cisco, we had a very effective worldwide mutual trust arrangement where we built a community of people who were prepared to take each other's live calls and support critical incidents in the face of misconfiguration, which is more often than anything else what went wrong, but also sometimes active attack. And so there's an existence proof that this can be done. To what extent it's currently available to mobile operators, I don't know, but you folks may. So, yep, carry on.
Thank you. Hi, Greg Choules, ISC, formerly of 3 Mobile Network. Just by doing this research, and given that a lot of the actors seem to be state-sponsored, does that put you at risk of suggesting things that should be done to tighten up the network that actually a lot of people don't want to be done because they still want to continue doing this stuff?
Yeah, I think it does put us. I think what I understand is these actors or whoever these people groups are. I think there are two aspects to it. They are actually part of the community. So, which means that they have access to all these documentation types that we are using ourselves, and all these security researches that indirectly goes into these, documentations. They are actually having that as well. So, I think it's just a matter of building an understanding that this is going to go for a very long time. I don't think so. It put us at risk. But I think it is something that we always consider. We had several interactions where we have intentionally engaged attackers to perform executions, and that's the main reason. We think that they are actually having the same level of access that we have, and they are being highly supported, by these state operations,
Dave, any more questions from online? Nope. In that case, thank you very much.